Schwartz, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Sin-seer, thanks for having me.
No doubt. We want to
Can't think of a better way to start a Sunday.
No doubt. Let's take it all the way back and then bring us up to 2024, what you currently have going on. For those who may not know, where was Chris born and raised?
I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, at a town called Devon, and I was born in the city, but I grew up in the suburbs, like in what they weren't even suburbs really. It was like all country, and then I joined the service when I was 17. Right, I dropped out of school, and I did 3 years in the Navy, and I came back and I started doing stuff in music. But it's not. I wouldn't. I didn't have any like a unconventional childhood or anything like that. But it would have seemed, if you'd have known me back then, you'd have thought it would be very unlikely that this guy would go on to own one of the most important hip hop companies in the world. But serendipity just follows me around, it seems, sometime. And it's been I'll tell you this, it's never have I had a dull day. I've had shitty days, but there was nothing dull about it.
Right. Can you take us back to some of your teenage years growing up in Philly?
Yeah, I wrote a book, right? Aptly called Ruff House, right? It was and I had never thought this, but it was a Amazon bestseller for like 3.5 years. And in it, I talk about my childhood. I give it the very first chapter. So I grew up in a family of 10 kids, and my father was a furniture salesman, and my mother was, went through a lot. She had a lot of issues, and so she was a lot of the times when we were of school age, right? It's kind of like two groups of people. We had the older kids and the younger kids. So there was 5 kids to start. And then my parents waited like a couple of years, and then they had another 5 kids. So it's to the point where when I was 5 years old, my oldest brother came home from college, and one morning I get up and I hear my mother talking to somebody, and she's standing there at the bottom of the stairs talking to this guy at the top of the stairs. He's got long blonde bushy hair and a beard, and he's standing there in his underwear talking to my mother. I'm like, who is this? And it was my oldest brother, and that's so there was a lot of, separation in years. And the reason I bring that up is because that I think had a lot to do with, the fact that I had a very violent childhood. Three of my brothers had issues, and so my father was a furniture salesman. He was always out on the road, right? My family's been in the furniture business for 173 years, since 1850. And my father was always out, soliciting his accounts and everything. And so that left like, a house with 10 kids. My father wasn't there most of the time, and my mother was incapacitated because she had addictions. She was an alcoholic and everything. So some of my older brothers took it upon themselves to, one brother in particular, to decide, oh, well, I'm going to be the patriarch of the family, and I'm going to do, but really it was all for him an opportunity for him to just be the asshole he always was. So I'd end up in a body cast. I couldn't walk for like a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and so it's all pretty gruesome. I used to come home at night, and if I saw any of these particular brothers were up, like I would stay outside till they went to bed, because I knew if I came inside, I'd get the shit beat out of me, and I would get sent to school with like broken bones, my nose broken, black eyes, like constantly. Well, Catholic school, they didn't care because they needed the tuition, and they kind of felt that it wasn't anybody's business as to how you raised your kids. But I went to public school in 5th grade, and they had all sorts of questions, and they had social services and all these people involved. And my parents were very fast to take me out of public school at that point. Now, it wasn't that my parents condoned it or anything like that. My mother was just she was too out of it to even understand what was going on. And my father, he's very old school. He was like a war hero. He was an Army Air Corps pilot and everything like that. He bombed, the Philippines and everything, take away from the Japanese and stuff. And I think he didn't want to believe that some of his sons had real mental problems. And I had one brother in particular who was very good. Like when my father was around, he would put on the show of like being the perfect son. It was really sickening. But anyhow, I talk about it in my book. So I basically, I dropped out of school and joined the Navy when I was 17 just to get away from these assholes,
Right.
So that was like the beginning. Now, I've been playing guitar since I was 9, and I'm by no means like an advanced player or anything like that. But I played when I joined the Navy. I played in bands, and it was great because I got a lot of really talented musicians to play in bands with me because it's just a lack of anything else to do. You're in the service. Where are you going to go, right?
Right.
And so that was very important for me. I learned a lot about black music in particular because my high school, my junior high and high school growing up, I think we had like, as far as like the makeup of the ethnic diversity, I think we only had there was like 5 black kids in my high school. That's not a lot, right? So
Right.
I didn't have. I mean, I knew some kids growing up, but I didn't really know the culture that well and everything like that. And so it was in the Navy that I really, discovered black music culture. Let's put it that way. And I was like really I fell head over heels for it because I was into electronic music because one of my best friends growing up, we met in 7th grade art class listening to like Frank Zappa and stuff, and we got into all this like really crazy electronic music like Kraftwerk, who were basically some of the forefathers of the breakbeat generation from an audio standpoint, with
Right.
electro funk and all that. And so we bought a Roland TR 808 in the March of 1981, and we got ours when it was we got a demo model of it. And like we were kind of some of the first people in Philadelphia to own one, and we bought it because we were into the idea of having a programmable drum machine. We had no idea how iconic this machine would be and everything. And so we were, performing. Jeff and I played in a number of bands, and we were playing a gig at the place called the Gallery Mall in Philadelphia. And we had it was Jeff and myself and this girl who sang. And so we were performing, and the Gallery Mall is predominantly African American demographic, right? So a group of kids were watching us play, and throughout the entire set, they were just all standing there staring at us and talking amongst themselves. And finally, I think they drew straws. One of them came up to talk to us, and he says, "Hey, can you guys do some drum programs for us?" And it was like, yeah, we were totally with it. So we had a studio at our house in West Philly. He came over, and we started recording hip hop groups. And soon I had like a whole slew of demos. And I found a studio in Philadelphia on North Broad Street, and it was owned by a guy who actually it was the first studio ever in Philadelphia before Sigma Sound and these famous studios like Philly International and everything. And guy's name was Frank Virtue, and Frank and his partner Vince DeRosa. Now his partner Vince owned a pressing plant in New Jersey called Soundmakers. Soundmakers pressed up all the records for all the independent labels in New York. Tommy Boy, Sleeping Bag, Next Plateau, Fresh Records, Def Jam, all these companies were independent. And so Vince and Frank, first time I met with them, I bought up all my demos, and I was looking to get my band a deal, right?
Right.
And so we played my band, and I'll never forget. Vince said, "This is you? You recorded this?" I was like, "Yeah," all excited. He goes, "Yeah, it's really not that good, right?" But he loved the hip hop stuff, And one of the artists that we had was a guy he was called Kid Fresh, right?
Mm-hmm.
He would later go on. He changed his name, his original name was Clinton Shirley. He changed his name to Mike Elliott. He was the one who came up and produced the Source Awards. But anywho, I recorded a bunch of hip hop groups up at Frank's, and we in exchange for I would help him record gospel groups, because he did a lot of remote recording of gospel groups. He would record them. He would record a church congregation. We would record the choir. He would master it and press up records, and then he'd sell them back to them at a wholesale price. They would buy it, and then they'd sell it to the congregation to raise money for the church, right? Mm-hmm. So that was his core business at the time. So I did that for a while, and then I took a job at a place called Nicetown Records in West Philly. And Nicetown Records was basically, we worked with Bunny Sigler, who was a one of the great Philly songwriter producers. So we did a couple records with we did Bunny Sigler. We did a record. Oh, he had a Bill Cosby live at Gradeford Prison. So this is when Bill Cosby, when he was younger, he was doing I Spy and these TV shows and everything in Vegas. He was also getting his doctorate's degree. So part of his thesis to get his doctorate's degree was he did a stand-up routine at it's Gradeford Prison. The guy I worked for, Ted Wing, was head of prisoners' activities. So the deal was that the tape, Bill Cosby gave the tape to the prison to be used to benefit to prisoners' activity, raise money for prisoners' activity fund. So we had this live at Gradeford Prison record. So and some other stuff. So working for Nicetown, I also used to supervise like the studio sessions. So the owner booked us to do a studio session at a place called Studio 4. Now, I'd been there once before, but I didn't really meet any of the people that owned it and ran it. And the engineer on the session was a guy named Joe Nicolo. And Ted, who was my boss, was a little bit of a bragger, and he would come into the studio and he would say stuff like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this deal with MCA and this and that," all this stuff constantly. And one time during that very session, I rolled my eyes, and I'm sitting there at console, and Joe's sitting next to me, and Ted's standing behind us talking, and I sat there and rolled my eyes like this, and Joey saw it. Ted walked out of the room, and Joey said, "So, well, how'd you end up working for Ted?" I said, "Look, man," man, it's not my dream job, right? But I feel that, I want to start my own label, right? And I loved hip hop. And the thing is, it's like there was a lot of things going on in hip hop. Hip hop had like an identity crisis in the early 80s.
Right.
Black radio, for the most part, they were very nervous about their advertising base. So the only hip hop that they played, now first off, there wasn't a lot of hip hop to play, right? You had all the electro funk stuff, right?
Right.
And then you had hip hop stuff, but a lot of it was like a lot of it was like really corny, right? It was just they played like the cleanest stuff, to try and because they were nervous about their advertising base, I said before. But one of the songs that I think that was really like kind of like a breakout was and I think it was an important song for hip hop was Jam on It by Nucleus. And the reason being is that when they started playing that song, it was like they had all these different versions of it. You had the extended play version, all that stuff. It's that they played the shit out of it. And the reason that song was important, because I believe that song really helped get hip hop established at Black radio. Because I think all the music directors and program directors looked at that song and said, "Wow, you know what? This stuff, we can play this and no problems, nobody's calling to cancel their, advertising and everything."
Right.
And so that kind of opened up the doors. So Philadelphia, it's like we were kind of like a hip New York. New York was the epicenter, was the cultural home of hip hop, right?
Right.